Hello, everybody, and welcome to my 7th Top 10 list. In celebration of hitting 10,000 subscribers, I asked my viewers to come up with 10 top 10 lists of any topic that they thought would be interesting or entertaining for me to compose. Today, we will be talking about my top 10 favorite gay romances in video games. Special thanks to Liz Draconis22, Jesse Chrisman, and Otaku Joe for requesting this list. Just a warning that I will try my best to avoid spoilers for these games beyond the romances themselves, but it is possible that I will mention plot-related events if they pertain directly with the romanceable character and how it affects their relationship. So consider yourself fairly warned. Without further ado, here are my top 10 favorite gay romances in video games. Number 10. Oz and Scott in Monster Prom. Visual novel video games have always been a guilty pleasure of mine, and this had the most unique gameplay due to it being the very first multiplayer visual novel game of its genre. You get to choose between 4 different characters and not only determine their sexuality, but also their pronouns, which I found pretty cool. My character of choice was immediately Oz, due to the fact that he was wearing my favorite color, orange, and he actually looked a lot like me in real life, which was fitting since me and my collaborating Let's Players all dressed up as our respective characters for the Halloween special. Arguably, Scott the Werewolf was the easiest character to get along with. He's so adorable, funny, and exceptionally charming when he's clearly not trying to be on purpose. He's a bit of a jock, but a sweet and genuine jock, and for me, that was the perfect combination. I mean, I married a sweet and genuine jock for maker's sake. Plus, him and Oz make such an incredibly cute couple at prom, so I simply had to include them within this list. Number 9. Art and Dorian in Dragon Age Inquisition. The Dragon Age franchise has historically held a very special place in my heart, and the romances are a major part of this. Dragon Age Inquisition is definitely up there as one of my favorite video games of all time, and the characters were what really made the experience stand out. Dorian is a favorite for a lot of people, and he was BioWare's first exclusively male-male romanceable party member. You can still see my reaction to this on one of my earlier analysis videos for Dragon Age Inquisition prior to its release. And then I get down to this. I especially loved his personal quest with his father, because that scene really hit home for me on a very personal level. It just made me relate to Dorian even more, and that in turn helped Art start falling for him too. The only reason why this couple isn't higher up on the list is because at the end of the game, the state of the relationship isn't quite as fairy tale perfect as I would like to warrant it being higher up. Had they actually allowed the two to get married, like you could with the Cullen romance, oh Cullen, then that would have banked their romance with a lot more points. I'm still a bit disappointed that they didn't allow you to get married to many more of the romanceable characters, but as long as I got it with Cullen, I'm satisfied enough. Number 8. Angelus and Brian from The Sims 3. Even though The Sims is a very different game from what I normally LP on my channel, those LPs still have quite a following. And watching the relationship between Angelus and Brian develop and grow from the moment they first met in college was wicked fun for me. They went on amazing adventures together all around the world, explored dangerous, trap-filled tombs and dungeons in search of treasured artifacts, eventually settled down to get married, started raising alien kids, which they were pregnant from, and even traveled through time into the distant future to meet their ancestors. I mean, their story together was epic. Talk about relationship goals, right? And easily my favorite moment of the LP, which should have ended up in one of my top 10 emotional moments on my channel, but I just remembered it now, was the finale montage video that I created in dedication to their love and relationship. I was especially proud of that 2-minute bit because I felt it captured their story from beginning to end perfectly in such a bittersweet way. Number 7. Galen and Cassia in Solstice. Solstice was quite a gem of a game to discover. Beyond the art style, the intriguing plot premise, and the unique game mechanic of switching back and forth between two protagonists, I was pleasantly surprised to discover that the male protagonist also happened to be gay. This was a pretty big deal for me, especially because of his romanceable partner, Cassia. In every other games I played that included romanceable characters prior to that, I always wished for a knight in shining armor type character to be available. There's just something about the chivalrous, martially trained archetype who also has a sweet and vulnerable heart of gold that I always was a complete sucker for. Characters like Alistair or Cullen in the Dragon Age franchise, for example. But I had not been able to find that in any of those games, at least not canonically. So, when Cassia came into the picture, I was so pleasantly surprised. And to top it all off, the man is a ginger! What more could I ask for? Really now. Number 6. Clive and Steve Cortez in Mass Effect 3. As I've said before in past top 10 lists, Mass Effect 3 holds a very special place in my heart due to it being the very first game that I ever Let's Played, and Steve Cortez was the very first male-male exclusive romance that BioWare had had to date. Even though he was only introduced in the final game of the trilogy, the developers did a great job in getting to know him and possibly develop his and Shepard's relationship either in platonic terms or more. I really enjoyed hearing about his backstory with his late husband, and I always loved his banter back and forth with Jimmy Vega. Oh, you crazy cute lovebirds, you! Number 5. Clive and Kaidan Alenko in Mass Effect 3. While Steve will always be the canon relationship for Clive Shepard, that doesn't mean that I don't also appreciate Kaidan Alenko's relationship either. I always loved Kaidan long before he was actually romanceable by a male Shepard. So much so that I even did a second Let's Play of Mass Effect 3 specifically to romance him with an alternate universe Clive Shepard. The main reason I had to rank Kaidan higher than Steve is simply because they do have a history together throughout the course of all 3 games in the trilogy. And to no fault of Steve's, it gave the writers a lot more material to work with during their more intimate moments together. Listening to Kaidan opening up to Shepard after all this time pulled so tightly on my heartstrings. These two are so cute together, and was definitely worth the second pass. Number 4. Gabriel and Robert McCready in Fallout 4. So, just an upfront warning that this one is going to hit a bit of spoiler territory over relevant events in the Fallout 4 game, so fair warning before I continue on. While Bethesda had included romanceable characters in their games prior, they weren't particularly known to be all that deep. Certainly not to the level of BioWare games, for example. They just weren't that type of RPG games. But they definitely bumped up their romance system more in Fallout 4. I was so genuinely shocked at how much I adored McCready's backstory and how it pertained to his growing relationship with Gabriel. In fact, I found the story of their romance just as engaging, if not more, than most of the BioWare romances that I had experienced. And that says a lot, coming from the styles of two completely different studios. And it especially surprised me since I wasn't really a fan of McCready's character when I first met him back in Fallout 3. The similarities between Gabe and McCready's histories about their spouses and kids was so poetic. How they deal with loving again, even though they are still in love with their previous spouses. I just love all the subtle touches that they included in the game, especially when Gabe takes McCready to visit the grave of his late wife.
Hey, I'm really sorry. We don't have to be here if you don't want to. I'll leave you alone.
McCready doesn't say much, but how he said it was enough to hit me. And of course, there's the part where they officially exchange vows to become husbands and all that shebang. All this and more is why Gabriel and McCready are definitely one of my personal top beloved gay romances up to this point. Number 3. Mark and Ian in Coming Out on Top. This was the very first visual novel that I ever Let's Played on my channel, and I instantly fell in love with it. I wasn't particularly that interested in romancing Ian at first, but I really got to know his character as the story progressed, and it felt so perfect for Mark to end up with him. This was a big surprise to me since I knew that a lot of the game was extremely focused on the sex, but regardless of that, they did a really great job of writing a super adorable, sweet, and genuine story behind Mark and Ian's relationship as best friends, and possibly more. Not even the ginger jock was able to beat Ian for me, and again, that says a lot. I think the part that really hit me was when Mark was reminiscing about the first time he ever met Ian, and it was in that moment that I just kind of lost it and got all misty-eyed and thought, oh man, like, these two guys belong to each other. I just could not resist making sure that they ended up together in the end. Mark and Ian, I love you both. You guys totally rock. Number 2, Angelus and Jespar in Enderal. Enderal is easily the best fan-made game mod that I have ever played to date. It's basically a complete, full, independent game that was made off of the Skyrim base game. Basically, pretend that Elder Scrolls and Dragon Age had a baby, and that's what Enderal is. Seriously though, if you love BioWare games and you happen to already own Skyrim, you need to play this game. It is a completely free, downloadable mod, but I highly encourage you to donate to the team because they more than deserve it. Personally, I love this game way more than the original Skyrim game itself. The polish and quality of the game, from the completely new spells/skills leveling system, to the fully voiced cast of characters, to the epically amazing storyline, was just a breathtaking masterpiece. And I haven't even gotten to the romances yet. Yes, there are 2 fully romanceable characters, a male and a female, that are available to any gender. And they are just as awesome as any BioWare romance, if not more. Jespar is the male romanceable character, and his romance was unlike any other romance I had ever experienced in any game prior. It was so interesting listening to his philosophy when it comes to love and romance, and his ideals can be particularly controversial to a lot of people, but it was so fascinating to listen to. Even though I never completely agreed with everything personally, I still respected his views and beliefs, and that is the key to any strong, stable relationship. I had a great time talking about and analyzing Jespar as a character because he's so complex. At the same time, he's charming, humorous, and yes, very easy on the eyes too. Jespar is a character I will not soon forget, and with very good reason. And my number 1 favorite gay romance in a video game is Angelus and Sir Rory Gilmore in Dragon Age Origins. So, if some of you who never saw my LP are confused, no, Sir Gilmore is not a canon romance in Dragon Age Origins. However, a woman named Immortality spent a lot of time and effort to create a beautiful mod that adds Sir Roland Gilmore as a romanceable, fully voiced party member in the core game, and her execution of it was so smart and clever. In the core vanilla game, a lot of gamers poked fun at the fact that you could start talking to a companion at camp, exhaust all their dialogue choices, shower them with gifts to bump up their approval rating, and then jump in the sack with them in under 10 minutes. Immortality came up with a more natural system where new dialogue would pop up as you completed major parts of the main storyline. Rory just didn't jump in the sack with you right away. You kind of needed to build up to it with him over time. And yes, for those of you who were interested, the mod also included a special quote-unquote intimate scene that would occur with Sir Gilmore and your warden, should they choose. There was unique dialogue depending on your origin story, especially if you happened to be a human noble. But even if you weren't, Rory would take the time to get to know you all the same. One of my favorite parts was when he curiously asks you what your hobbies are, which is a really sweet and touching thing to ask that none of the other canon party members seemed all that interested in, at least in-game. And then later on, he surprises you with a super thoughtful gift based on the hobby answer you gave him before. Little touches like that was just so cool to me. And what's really impressive is that the Sir Gilmore mod was flexible enough to let you romance Rory in whatever way you wished. You could romance him with any gender and any race. You could be friends with benefits, or have a much deeper relationship. You could get married, or completely not believe in such formalities. And if that weren't enough, She also added Sir Gilmore into the Dragon Age Awakenings DLC, and his relationship with your warden was maintained in that too. And even though he wasn't in the canon game, I still was able to include Rory in the special Dragon Age mural that I have hanging behind me on my wall. How ironic that my top 2 favorite romances are from video game mods. But it just goes to show that you don't have to be a big mainstream video game company to come up with amazing content that sometimes surpasses the original. To everyone who has ever created a mod, big or small, simply because you are a passionate fan of the game, allow me to salute you and give my deepest gratitude. Because if it weren't for you guys, I wouldn't have been able to have that hunky, sweet, and thoughtful ginger guard that is Sir Rory Gilmore. Well, that's a wrap, everyone. Let me know in the comments what your favorite romance was in a video game, gay, straight, or otherwise. As always, I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching, and tune in next time for even more Top 10 lists. Until then, love yourselves and love each other.